celebrate Halloween, here are my top 10 favorite horror movies. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going through my top 10 personal favorite horror movies of all time. I've had some iterations of this video over the years, but these are my up-to-date favorite horror films as it is Halloween, so happy Halloween to everyone out there watching the day this video is uploaded at least. Before I get in this list, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below your favorite horror films of all time, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And check out the Unusual Couple podcast. We have a special Halloween episode dropping tomorrow that I am very excited about. Without further ado, let's just hop right in. So coming in at number 10 on this list is The Shining. This is one of the most widely acclaimed horror films. A lot of people would have it at their number one spot probably, and it just barely squeaks into my list. I think the movie's really well made. Jack Nicholson acts the hell out of it, and he has so many quotable lines. And just the setting of the Overlook Hotel is very eerie, creepy, like that abandoned setting always just makes me feel uneasy whenever I'm watching a movie. And watching Jack Torrance's descent into madness over the course of this movie is really well directed by Kubrick. It's obviously one of the more iconic horror films. The reason it's not higher on this list is because it's not very rewatchable to me. It's a film I rarely find myself wanting to go back to. You know, the one-time watch hits, and I think about, you know, certain moments like, I'm not gonna kill you, I'm just gonna bash your brains in. Or, you know, Here's Johnny. Of course, all these moments from the film have become iconic in pop culture, but it's just not a movie I go back to as much as some of the others on this list, but it had to be on this list, if that makes sense. It's very, very good, like a 4 to 4.5 out of 5 star movie. I just couldn't put it higher because this, again, is my personal ranking. So coming in at number 9 on the list is Get Out, which I know a lot of people are like, well, that's not a horror movie. Technically it is, that's why it does squeak in on this list. If this was more of a straight up movie, I might prefer Get Out to some others on this list, but in terms of horror, it is on the tamer side, which is why I personally had it a little bit lower. But this is Jordan Peele's best movie by far, in my opinion. I don't know if he'll ever reach this height again. Whenever, you know, a director has a debut that's just such a home run, it's hard to live up to that expectation with all the films that would follow. But Get Out is a brilliant movie. Obviously, there's a lot of social commentary about modern society and all that jazz, but when you get down into it, the thrills are there. It is a tense movie, and the reveals in the third act had me shook. This movie is so brilliant. There's these little details sprinkled throughout that kind of hint at where the movie's heading. By the time you reach that third act, it becomes full-on craziness, and my knuckles were so tense. I was literally gripping onto the edge of my seat the first time I ever watched Get Out. It's become almost a modern horror classic to me, and I think years from now we'll look back on it even more fondly than we do right now. But the thing that's so brilliant about this is the way that it intersperses that comedy. It still has like moments of levity. It's not just a straight up dark movie. That's Jordan Peele's style for you, and this movie just works for me. But coming at number 8, we've got John Carpenter's The Thing. This is like the gold standard for practical effects in horror movies. I watched it for the first time, I want to say in October of 2020. And I remember being blown away by how real everything looked. Like, practical effects are always going to top CGI when the practical effects are actually done right. And there's just so much attention to detail put to them in this film. So much so that it's gruesome. It's hard to watch even because of how real it looks. It makes you just feel more unnerved than watching something that you know is fake. Practical effects, on the other hand, look so much more realistic that it can really get to you or get under your skin, much like The Thing in this movie. This movie will make you feel cold. It's at this base, and the idea of isolation, or more so the fear of being isolated out in the middle of nowhere where no one can come save you, is really brought to light in this movie. There's also concepts of paranoia running rampant throughout this entire movie, so it's a masterfully crafted horror film. Again, not as rewatchable for me, that's why it's not as high, but The Thing is a damn good horror movie, and Kurt Russell crushes it in that lead role. But coming in at number 7 on my list, I've actually got A Quiet Place. I thought about putting part 2 on this list as well, but I was like, you know what, I'll just put the first movie because that concept is so creative. And John Krasinski in this film, outstanding. He also directed the movie, which he knocked out of the park. And honestly, Emily Blunt should have been considered for an Oscar nomination for supporting actress because of that scene in the bathtub. It's a movie where you can't really make noises because these creatures are attracted to noise and they'll come find you and kill you. So it's a very quiet movie, not a lot of dialogue, but the story is still so compelling and it hooks you in as they have these little hand signals they'll communicate with, or they'll whisper, but it doesn't even need words. The tension is there without dialogue. It's a silent movie essentially, and that just adds to the tension. Like when I saw this in theaters, it was dead silent and I was on edge the entire runtime. It's a 90-minute quick hitter that hooks you early on with some brutal moments, but also there's a heartfelt relationship between a family just trying to survive in this post-apocalyptic world. It's a sweet movie, it'll break your heart, but it will also horrify you in the best possible ways. It also ends with a wild cliffhanger. We did get a sequel, but if we never got a sequel, it would have been one of the biggest cliffhanger endings I think I've ever seen. Number 6 on my list is Final Destination. I'm a sucker for this entire franchise, and I think they're making a 6th film, which I'm on board for, if they don't mess up the ending of 5. But anyway, the first Final Destination is such a unique concept. You cannot escape death, and it's frightening because this guy going on the school trip gets on the plane and he has this premonition of the plane blowing up and everyone dying, and that's just very dark by nature. But then he freaks out, gets off the plane, looks out the window as the plane takes off, and it actually does happen. So we had a premonition of himself dying and a lot of his other classmates dying, but some of them got off the plane and avoided death, so now death is coming for them over the course of the movie, as they were not supposed to avoid it, they were supposed to die. It was their destiny, if you will. This movie just always messed with me mentally. Like, it makes me feel so like violated after I watch it. It makes you come face to face with the idea of death, which I think we can all agree is frightening. Whether you want to admit it or not, the concept of dying is probably one of the scariest things in the world, and this movie really hones in on that and makes you feel uneasy. And pretty much every movie in the franchise opens with this premonition, but the first film made that template that the rest of the sequels would follow. The first film has the best characters, has some really unique death scenes that are terrifying, and all around it just created this concept that spooks me still. Like, talking about it right now, I don't even feel comfortable, so gonna move on from it, but Final Destination's a damn good movie. Moving on to number 5, I've got Insidious, a movie that I watched for the first time this year. It's a movie that I built up to be the most terrifying thing ever, because growing up, I didn't really watch horror movies, and this movie came out in 2010 when I was about 10, 11 years old, and my friends had told me all about it, so I knew a lot about the movie, but I'd never actually seen it. So I had built up these scenes in my head for it to be the most horrifying thing ever, and I went and watched it, and the movie was damn scary, like probably one of the top 5 scariest movies I've ever seen, but it's not the outright scariest movie I've ever seen. I have to shout out James Wan for his direction here. I mean, he creates that eerie feel from the moment the film opens. It's got this cold feel to it, like the color grading is very dim and gray, and there's just no like sense of comfortability with this movie. Like, this is not a movie that's gonna make you feel happy. It's gonna disturb you and gross you out and just make you feel dark inside. There's no way around it. It's a great movie though because of that, and I think James Wan's filmmaking is what really shines here. Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne also have great chemistry as the leads of this family. And it's just a dark, unsettling movie, but it's one of the better made horror films I've ever seen, and it has one of the most effective jump scares ever. Now, I was spoiled for it, so I knew when it was coming, because again, my friends when I was growing up had told me about it. I told them to at the time. Do I regret it? Maybe, but I was on the lookout for it. But if I did not know that jump scare was coming, I probably would have jumped out of a window, out of straight up fear. This is a very effective horror film. And staying in the James Wan ballpark, my number 4 is The Conjuring. This ever so slightly edges out Insidious for me. The Conjuring 1 is such a well-crafted horror film that takes time to actually set up the main characters of the film, the Warrens, who are these paranormal investigators, but also the actual main family, so that we feel for them when the possession actually happens, instead of it just being like, oh look, a demon. We actually feel for this family because we take some time to get to know their family dynamics and relationships. And James Wan, just like with Insidious, creates that eerie, uneasy feeling from the moment this film opens. There's a sense of realism to this movie, unlike a lot of the others on this list, because it is inspired by true events, but the way the film is told, it just feels real. There's practical effects, it's horrifying at times, and I think it's probably the best possession movie I've seen. Now, I haven't seen some of the most iconic, I won't name drop them here, but The Conjuring, when I think, possession films, my mind goes to the first Conjuring movie. It's just so effective. There are jump scares that will get you, and the human characters in the film you feel for. There's actual humans in a horror movie. A lot of times horror movies just don't take time to really set up these characters. This is an outlier because you do feel for them and you're rooting against the demons. Like, there are moments where I get chills from Patrick Wilson's acting at the end. I condemn you back to hell. When he says that, one of the best acted scenes in that entire movie. It's a great horror film that's just shy of making my top 3. When we get to my top 3, these are the movies you probably already knew before you clicked on the video. These are ones that I talk about all the time in live streams or just in general, and they're my 3 favorite horror films. They're constantly rotating. This is how I'm feeling as of sitting down and recording this. My number 3 is the original Saw. Recently rewatched this movie in preparation for Saw X, and I love it. It holds up to this day. I think I've seen it a handful of times in my life, but that first time will never be topped. I had no clue there was a big plot twist in this movie, and so when it happened, my jaw was on the floor. I literally stood up and turned around and looked at my girlfriend who was showing me the movie, and I was like, this is mad. I've never had a plot twist do that to me before. It literally got me so good, and aside from just the twist, the actual premise of this movie is so clever. James Wan and Lee Winnell created this original concept that's low budget, and it feels real. It's like a thriller. This is not one of the gory, over-the-top with the traps movies yet. It's a contained thriller with Dr. Gordon and this guy named Adam getting locked in this bathroom, and they're trying to figure out why the hell they're here. It's almost got murder mystery vibes to it at times. We flash back out of the bathroom for a lot of context with other scenes, you know, to build up this detective or to build up Gordon's family. But the film just has a lot of mystery and tension. Clues slowly start to unravel over the course of the movie. By the time it wraps up, it's so perfectly done with a twist and score that sends chills down my spine every single time I see it. This Saw movie, above all else, really takes time to characterize everybody and make you feel for the characters in these situations. It's iconic, it's got that great twist, and it's just one of my personal favorite horror films and always will be. But my runner-up is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960. Another movie with an outstanding twist. I'd say this and Saw are like top tier twists for me. There's a few more that aren't in the horror genre that are up there, but I mean, my God, the first time I saw Psycho, I didn't know any spoilers. I had somehow avoided them, and so when the big reveal happened, I was shook, just like I was with Saw. But this film is black and white, it's from the 60s, and it's got that classic feel to it, but it's also a movie that essentially sparked this slasher craze, as you've got Norman Bates' mother supposedly killing all these people. When you go and watch the movie, you gotta find out what's actually going on. Anthony Perkins plays Norman Bates so well. He's this creepy dude. There's definitely something off about him, and over the course of the movie, it unravels as to why he's acting the way he is. You've got that shower scene. The movie will misdirect you as a viewer a lot and keep you on your toes, but this movie just goes to show the genius of Alfred Hitchcock. They don't call him the master of suspense for nothing. Psycho is a top tier horror movie for me that always will be, and just the aesthetic of this movie makes me feel like it's spooky season. I want to cuddle up with a blanket and just have those, you know, spooky vibes for about 2 hours. But taking the top spot, my favorite horror film of all time is Scream. Ever since I first watched this movie, it's grown on me so much. I've fallen in love with the franchise, and I can probably comfortably say Scream is the most consistently great horror franchise out there. But the first Scream is the best. It is a self-aware movie that's critiquing a lot of these stupid and cheesy horror genre tropes while still being a scary movie in and of itself and having a great group of characters. You got the character in Randy who works at the video store who creates this set of rules for the horror film and how you know a character is gonna die. But then you've got Sydney, who is just the badass final girl of the film. And then you got characters like Billy, Stu Macher, Courtney Cox's Gail, Dewey. The list goes on in terms of creating characters that you give a damn about, that feel like real humans and have great chemistry together. This is one of the rare horror films that, yes, has those over-the-top kills, but more importantly has characters. That's the most important thing in any movie, characters and plot, and this excels in both of those. It's a mystery from the start, as you don't know who Ghostface is, you're trying to figure out who the killer is. That inherently is just more interesting to me than a lot of these other famous slasher franchises where the slasher is just the embodiment of evil and they just never die. It's like, what's the point of watching this movie if we know they're just never gonna die, they're gonna kill everyone or get away? The Scream movies, the way I describe it, it's like a Scooby-Doo mystery. Every movie, you're trying to figure out who Ghostface really is. It feels fresh in each film, but I'm specifically talking about the first here. The twist got me good because it tries to make things obvious, but it constantly fools with you and you're like, wait, what is going on? It confuses you to the point of like, did I guess this twist or did I not? And it will likely get you in the end. Shout out to Matthew Lillard's performance. He goes full on loony near the end and just eats it right up. But Scream's an iconic horror film. I think we all love it. The opening alone pretty much gets it on this top 10 because of the misdirection, killing off a famous actress in Drew Barrymore that early on, especially when she was marketed to be like the main star of the movie. So Scream is brilliant, it's meta, it really knows what it is. It's got some great comedic bits, it's scary at times, and it's the definitive slasher to me, making it my favorite horror film of all time. But those are just my favorite horror movies as of recording this video. I may update this video, you know, in a year or so when I watch more horror films, but let me know in the comments down below your favorite horror movies. What movie do you love to watch on Halloween? And I hope you guys have a wonderful Halloween if you're watching this video. video today. But hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. It will mean a lot. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.